In the heart of downtown Boston, veteran firefighter James Morrison thought he'd seen it all in his 30 years of service. But as he charges into a burning historic building, defying direct orders and risking everything to check for survivors, he has no idea that this routine call will shake the very foundation of American history. Behind a crumbling wall, in a hidden vault untouched for centuries, lies a collection of documents that powerful people have killed to keep secret. With the building groaning around him and mysterious figures already moving to contain the situation, James faces an impossible choice: escape with his life or stay to uncover a truth that could change everything. What could be so dangerous that someone would burn down a building to destroy it? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra, special for you. Steam rose from the coffee cup clutched in James Morrison's weathered hands, the aroma of familiar comfort in the pre-dawn quiet of Station 42. 30 years of mornings just like this one, yet he still arrived an hour before his shift began. Old habits, like old firefighters, die hard. His reflection caught his eye in the polished glass of a display case. Inside, mounted on red velvet, his first badge gleamed dully, the numbers worn smooth from years of service before it was retired. 1993-2003. A different era of firefighting. Simpler in some ways, though every era had its own demons to battle. Early. "And always, Cap?" Mike Chen's voice broke through the stillness. The young lieutenant had been with the department for 5 years now, showing promise that reminded James of himself at that age. "Someone's got to keep you kids in line," James replied, his lined face creasing into a smile. "Besides, paperwork doesn't file itself." Mike poured himself a cup of coffee, settling into the chair across from James. "Speaking of paperwork, did you hear about the preservation order on the Madison building? City council's fighting over whether to declare it a historical landmark." James's eyebrows lifted slightly. The Madison building had been a thorn in the department's side for years, an architectural beauty from the 1800s that had somehow escaped modern safety upgrades. "Third time they've tried to get that designation, isn't it?" "Fourth," Mike corrected, pulling out his phone to show James the morning's news. "But get this, someone's pushing hard to block it. Anonymous donor offered to buy the whole block for redevelopment." The rest of the crew began filtering in as the sun crept above the horizon. Tommy Rodriguez, the newest firefighter, still had that eager shine in his eyes that came with youth. Sarah Williams, their engineer, moved with the quiet confidence of someone who knew every inch of their truck like it was an extension of herself. James watched them go through their morning checks with practiced precision. The world might be changing around them, but some things remained constant: the weight of responsibility, the brotherhood of service, the knowledge that each day could bring either routine or catastrophe. His hand unconsciously touched the spot where his old badge used to rest. These days, a new one sat there, heavier with rank, lighter with technological advances in materials. But the old one in the display case held stories that would never make it into official reports, like the Thompson fire in '95, when he'd found those kids huddled in a closet, terrified but alive, or the warehouse collapse in '99 that nearly took his leg, and did take his partner David's life. The badge had witnessed it all, a silent testament to triumphs and tragedies alike. The morning briefing brought him back to the present. "Engine 42, ladder 17, we've got potential for high winds today. Keep your heads on a swivel." James's voice carried the authority of experience. "Rodriguez, Chen, I want you checking all our forcible entry tools. Williams, run diagnostics on the thermal imaging cameras. Last thing we need is equipment failure when it counts." As the crew dispersed to their tasks, James caught sight of his phone screen lighting up. A text from Emily, his daughter. "Dad, need to talk. History depth meeting about Madison building preservation. Something doesn't add up." He stared at the message. a familiar worry gnawing at his gut. Emily had followed her mother's footsteps into academia, rather than his, into the fire service. These days, their conversations mostly revolved around her research at the university, when they talked at all. Ever since Carol passed, the distance between them had grown into something more than just physical miles. The station's alarm system chose that moment to screech to life, cutting off any chance to reply. Engine 42, ladder 17, respond to reported. Structure fire. James was already moving, muscle memory taking over as he shouldered into his turnout gear. Whatever Emily wanted to discuss would have to wait. Right now, duty called, just as it had for 30 years of mornings exactly like this one, but something about this morning felt different. Maybe it was Emily's cryptic message, or the mention of the Madison building twice in one morning. Or maybe it was just that the old badge in its case seemed to catch the light differently today, like it was trying to tell him something about what lay ahead. The morning's call turned out to be nothing more than a faulty alarm system at a downtown office building. By noon, James found himself back at his desk, the photograph on the corner drawing his gaze as it always did. 3 smiling faces caught in a moment of perfect happiness. Himself, Carol, and Emily at her high school graduation. Before Carol's cancer, before the arguments about Emily's career choice, before everything changed, his fingers traced the frame's worn edges. Carol would have known how to bridge this gap with Emily. She'd always been the diplomat of the family, smoothing rough edges with gentle wisdom. The photo had been taken just outside the university, where Emily now taught, where Carol had once taught too. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Emily. Dad, seriously, need your input on something. Can we meet for coffee? The tone in her texts was unusual. Emily was typically direct, academic, precise with her words. This hesitancy wasn't like her at all. Everything all right, Cap? Mike's voice carried from the doorway. You've been staring at that phone like it might bite. James set the device down. Just family stuff, Mike. My daughter's trying to tell me something without telling me something. He smiled wryly, though these days I'm never quite sure if I'm reading too much into things or not enough. The afternoon brought a steady stream of routine calls. A kitchen fire in Back Bay, a car accident on Commonwealth Avenue, an elderly man who'd fallen in his bathroom. James moved through each one with practiced efficiency, but his mind kept circling back to Emily's messages and the morning's discussion about the Madison building. Between calls, he pulled up the building's history on his computer. Built in 1872, survived the Great Boston Fire that same year, renovated in 1923 and again in 1957. What caught his eye was a note about extensive basement modifications during the 1923 renovation. But the details were surprisingly sparse for such a significant structure. Cap! Sarah's voice carried urgency. You're gonna want to see this. The TV in the common room was showing footage of a protest outside City Hall. The camera panned across signs reading, "Preserve Our History" and "Save the Madison Building." But what drew James's attention was Emily, standing at the podium, gesturing emphatically as she addressed the crowd. The historical significance of this site cannot be overstated. Emily's voice came through clearly. And recent discoveries suggest... The feed cut abruptly to commercial. James reached for his phone, typing quickly. Coffee, your usual spot. My shift ends at 6. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of routine maintenance and equipment. Checks. James found himself repeatedly glancing at the family photo, seeing Carol's knowing smile. She would have already figured out what was bothering Emily, would have known exactly what questions to ask. At 5:45, Tommy rushed into the office, excitement written across his young face. Cap, you're not going to believe this. Remember that warehouse call from last week, the one with the weird hot spots? James nodded. They'd found unusual burn patterns, almost like someone had strategically placed accelerants, but no evidence had survived to prove it. Well, I was reviewing the thermal imaging footage for the training manual, and I noticed something. Tommy laid his tablet on the desk. Look at the wall temperatures in the surrounding buildings. They're elevated in exactly the same pattern as the Madison Building's basement readings from our last inspection. James studied the images, a chill running down his spine despite the warm evening air. The patterns were identical, too identical to be coincidence. His phone buzzed one final time. Emily, Dad, don't come to the cafe. Meet me at the university library instead. Back entrance, please. James looked again at the family photo, at Carol's face frozen in that moment of joy. Watch. The house, Mike, he called, grabbing his jacket. I've got a meeting with my daughter about history. James never made it to the library. Halfway there, his phone erupted with the distinctive tone of the department's emergency alert system. In the same instant, an old Motorola radio on his desk at the station, a restored model from the 70s, he kept as a reminder of simpler times, crackled to life along with its modern counterpart. All units respond. 4-alarm fire at Madison Building. Possible structural compromise. Multiple civilians reported inside. The irony wasn't lost on him as he swung his car around, lights flashing. A text to Emily would have to suffice. Emergency call. Madison Building rain check. Her response was immediate. Dad, wait! The archives, but he was already pulling up to the scene, and what he saw drove all thoughts of archives from his mind. Flames licked up the building's eastern face, beautiful and terrible in the gathering dusk. The historic facade that had stood for over a century was disappearing behind thick, black smoke. Mike was already orchestrating the initial response, his voice steady over the radio as he directed incoming units. But something about the smoke pattern nagged at James's experienced eye. It was too dark, too concentrated in specific areas, just like the thermal imaging patterns Tommy had shown him hours earlier. Chief's 2 minutes out, Sarah reported, manipulating the engine's controls with precision. But we've got confirmation of at least 3 people still inside. Security guard says they're researchers. We're working in the basement level. James felt his blood run cold. Researchers? At this hour? Archives department, Tommy added, checking his air tank. According to the guard, they've been down there all week. Some kind of special project. The building chose that moment to groan, a deep structural sound that every firefighter learns to fear. Bits of ornate cornice began raining down onto the street. All units, hold your positions. The arriving chief's voice crackled over the radio. Buildings showing signs of imminent collapse. Wait for structural assessment. A woman burst through the gathering crowd, her academic badge swinging wildly. You don't understand. The documents, if they burn... She locked eyes with James. Your daughter sent me. We found something. Something they don't want found. The old radio in James's office had always represented the unchanging principles of their profession. Protect life, preserve property, prevent harm. But as he stood there, watching the Madison Building burn, while this stranger spoke of secrets and his daughter's involvement, he realized some principles transcended time and technology. Rodriguez, Chen with me, he ordered, checking his equipment. Williams, get ready with the deck gun. If this goes south, you'll need to drown everything. Cap, the chief's orders, Mike began. Sometimes the old ways are best, James cut him off, moving toward the building's side entrance. We go in, we find them, we get out, no heroics. James, the chief's voice held warning. Don't risk it. Building's a loss. There's more than a building at stake here, James replied, thinking of Emily's urgent messages, the suspicious burn patterns, the researchers working late with documents someone might want destroyed. Trust me on this one. As they approached the entrance, James keyed his radio one last time. In the station, the old Motorola picked up his transmission alongside its modern counterpart, past and present, harmonizing in a moment of decision. Engine. 42 to command, making entry via side door. 3 firefighters searching for 3 civilians, starting search timer now. The door opened with a blast of heat and smoke. As James led his team inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something much bigger than a simple fire. The woman's words echoed in his mind, something they don't want found. Behind them, the Madison building continued its ominous chorus of groans and creaks, counting down the moments until its secrets would either be revealed or buried forever. In the rubble of history, the first thing James noticed was wrong about the fire was the heat. After 30 years, he could read a building's temperature like others read a newspaper, and this one was telling an impossible story. The entrance hallway was cool, too cool for a fully involved structure fire, but 50 feet in, the temperature spiked dramatically, as if someone had drawn a line where the fire should begin. "Check your thermal imaging," he ordered Chen and Rodriguez. "You seeing this?" The cameras revealed what their eyes couldn't through the smoke, distinct geometric patterns of intense heat, almost like a maze leading them deeper into the building. "No natural fire burned this way. Cap, these readings don't make sense." Chen's voice crackled through their headsets. "It's like someone mapped it out," James finished. "Engineering the perfect burn pattern." The words from his conversation with Tommy hours earlier came back to him. Identical patterns across multiple buildings. They moved deeper, following their thermal guidelines through the smoke. The building's historic bones creaked around them, timber and steel protesting against the unnatural stress. Every few steps, James caught glimpses of the building's original grandeur through gaps in the smoke. Ornate woodwork, marble floors, brass fixtures blackened by heat. "Movement," Rodriguez called out. "Two signatures, basement level, east corner." The thermal imaging showed two heat signatures huddled in what appeared to be a large room, but something else caught James's eye. The wall next to them showed a completely different thermal pattern, cooler, more uniform, as if it were made of different material than its surroundings. "Fire suppression systems offline," Chen reported, checking a nearby panel. "But look at this. It was manually disabled within the last hour." Another groan from above, this one lasting longer. James knew that sound. The building was moving past the point of no return. "Command Engine 42. Buildings showing critical structural stress. Need immediate location of basement access." The radio crackled with interference before the chief's voice broke through. "Negative on basement access, Engine 42. Plans show no such level existing." James exchanged looks with his team. No basement? Then where were they seeing those heat signatures? A crash from above sent them pressing against the walls as debris rained down. Through gaps in the falling material, James caught sight of something that stopped him cold. A modern keypad lock, partially concealed behind what looked like original wood paneling. "Cap, we need to move," Chen urged. "This place is coming down." But James was already moving toward the keypad, mind racing. Emily's urgent messages about the archives, researchers working late, a fire that burned in impossible patterns. It all connected to whatever lay behind this hidden door. "Rodriguez, hook up the bypass." James pulled the specialized electronic override device from his gear. It was designed for accessing modern buildings during emergencies, but he'd never expected to use it in a structure this old. The device's screen flickered to life, cycling through combinations as more debris fell around them. Chen kept watch on the thermal imaging, tracking the fire's progress through the building's upper floors. 30 seconds to get this done," James warned, watching the override work. After that, the keypad emitted a soft beep, and something heavy clicked behind the wall. A section of what looked like original masonry swung inward, revealing a steel-lined corridor that shouldn't exist in a building this old. Modern ventilation systems hummed within, pushing back the smoke. The temperature dropped noticeably as they stepped through, some kind of climate control system, still functioning despite the inferno above. "Command Engine 42, James reported, hardly believing what he was seeing. "We've found a secure sublevel, moving to locate victims," but only Static answered. The steel walls of the hidden corridor blocked their radio signals, leaving them alone with their discoveries and questions. As they moved deeper into the hidden space, their thermal cameras revealed more impossible things. Rows of climate-controlled storage units, modern computer terminals, and at the far end, two warm bodies huddled next to what appeared to be a massive vault door. "This isn't just a basement," Chen whispered, voicing what they all realized. "This is some kind of archive, or a cover-up," James added, thinking of Emily's cryptic warnings. He checked his air supply gauge. 15 minutes left. 15 minutes to rescue the researchers, discover what was worth burning down a historic building to hide, and get out before the whole structure came down around them. Above, the Madison building shifted again, a deep structural movement that shook loose centuries of history. Time was running out, and James had a feeling that the real danger wasn't the fire spreading above them. It was whatever truth lay hidden behind that vault door. The vault door looked like something out of a bank heist movie, a massive circular barrier of gleaming steel, completely incongruous with the building's 1800s architecture. But it was the people huddled beside it that demanded immediate attention. Two women in dust-covered business attire pressed themselves against the wall, coughing. The younger one clutched a leather document case to her chest like a shield. The older woman James recognized, Dr. Helen Martinez, Emily's department head at the university. "Dr. Martinez." James moved forward, signaling Chen to check their condition. "What are you doing down here?" "Captain Morrison?" Recognition flickered in her smoke-reddened eyes. "Emily's father. Thank God. We have to secure your documents." Another bone-shaking groan from above. Rodriguez's voice crackled through their headsets. "Cap, structural integrity's failing fast. 5 minutes, maybe less." But Helen was already punching numbers into the vault's keypad with trembling fingers. "You don't understand. What we found, it changes everything. The real documents from the founding, the truth about..." A coughing fit cut her off. The vault door swung open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a climate-controlled chamber lined with metal shelves. Preservation cases filled the space, each one numbered and sealed, but Helen moved straight to a specific case, her movements urgent despite her obvious exhaustion. "These prove it wasn't an accident," the younger woman spoke up, opening her document case. Inside, James caught glimpses of photographed pages, digital storage drives, and what looked like laboratory reports. The fire in 1872, it was deliberate. Just like this one. The building shifted again, and this time the sound of collapsing. Masonry was unmistakable. Chen's voice held controlled urgency. "Cap, we're out of time." James made a split-second decision. "Rodriguez, help Dr. Martinez. Chen, grab those cases. We're taking everything we can carry." "No!" Helen protested as Rodriguez moved to support her. "The vault, it's fireproof. The documents will be safer." "Look at those heat patterns upstairs," James cut her off. "This isn't a normal fire. Someone wants these documents destroyed, and they're willing to bring down the whole building to do it. The vault might survive, but who do you think will control access to it once this place collapses?" Understanding dawned in Helen's eyes. She nodded weakly, allowing Rodriguez to guide her toward the exit, while Chen and James quickly but carefully gathered preservation cases. The younger woman hesitated at the vault entrance. "The digital backups, the computer systems." "No time," James ordered. "Whatever you've already documented will have to be enough. Move!" They were halfway back to the hidden entrance when James's radio crackled to life. They must have found a signal pocket. The chief's voice cut through static. "Immediate evacuation. All units withdraw. Buildings going..." The rest was lost in a deafening roar as something massive shifted above them. Dust and debris poured through suddenly visible cracks in the ceiling of their supposedly secure corridor. "Run!" James shouted, but his team was already moving. Years of training took over as they rushed through the darkness, carrying their precious cargo and supporting the civilians. James brought up the rear, his mind racing through collapse scenarios and escape routes. They burst through the hidden door just as the first major support beam gave way. The sound was like artillery fire, wood and steel snapping under centuries of weight. But now they faced a new problem. Their original exit route was completely blocked by fallen debris. "Side stairwell!" James commanded, already turning down a smoke-filled corridor. "Emergency exit to the alley!" As they ran, Helen clutched the preservation case she'd insisted on carrying herself. "Captain!" she gasped between breaths. "What's in here?" It proves the conspiracy. The orchestrated destruction of evidence going back centuries. "Save your breath," James advised, though his mind was already connecting dots. The suspicious fire patterns Tommy had discovered, Emily's urgent messages, the hidden vault of secrets someone would kill to keep buried. Just focus on getting out alive. History's no good to anyone if we don't survive to tell it. Behind them, the Madison Building's death throes echoed through smoke-darkened halls. But James had a feeling that what they carried, these documents that had survived centuries of attempts to destroy them, would shake the foundations of something far more substantial than just one historic building. The side stairwell was a maze of smoke and shadows, illuminated only by their flashlights and emergency strips. As they descended, Helen stumbled, the preservation case slipping from her grasp. James caught it before it could hit the ground, and in that moment of chaos, the case's aged latch gave way. A single document slid partially out, yellowed parchment, with faded ink, protected by archival-grade preservation sheets. In the beam of his flashlight, James caught glimpses of a date, April 19th, 1775. Below it, a hastily scrawled signature that made his breath catch. Paul Revere. "It's his actual account," Helen wheezed, steadying herself against the wall. "Not the story they teach in schools. The real reason for the midnight ride, what they were trying to protect that night. The warehouse fires weren't just about hiding British weapons." Another crash from above cut off her explanation. Rodriguez's voice crackled through their headsets. "Cap, east wall's going. We've got maybe 2 minutes." But James couldn't tear his eyes from the document. Through the protective covering, he made out fragments of text. Secret vaults beneath the Old North Church. And documents that must never see light, for the very foundation of our enterprise depends upon their concealment. The fire patterns, the younger woman, who'd introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to his lieutenant, said as they resumed their descent. "They match exactly with fires set in 1775. Same locations, same strategic points. Someone's been using the same playbook for centuries." The stairwell ended at a heavy fire door. Beyond it lay the alley and freedom. But as James reached for the handle, movement outside caught his attention. Through the door's small window, he glimpsed dark vehicles pulling up, men in tactical gear deploying with practiced precision. "Federal agents," Dr. Chen whispered, peering past him. "But not any branch I recognize. They were at the university too, after we found the first documents. They're why we moved everything here." James keyed his radio. "Chen, Rodriguez, hold position. We've got company outside." He turned to Helen. "What exactly did you find in those vaults?" Helen's face was grave in the emergency lighting. "Evidence of a shadow government operating since before the revolution. Secret societies that shaped every major historical event, using fire to erase any trace of their existence. The real stories. Behind the Boston Tea Party, the Great Fire of 1872, all of it orchestrated to protect their secrets." Another explosion rocked the building. Through his headset, James heard the chief ordering all units to pull back to a safe distance. The Madison Building was living its final moments. He looked at the document in his hands, then at the agents positioning themselves outside. Years of firefighting had taught him to make impossible decisions in moments of crisis. But this one felt different. This wasn't just about saving lives anymore. It was about saving truth itself. "Dr. Martinez," he said finally, "how good are you at using your phone's camera?" She blinked, then understood. As she carefully photographed each visible page, James keyed his radio. "Sarah, bring the deck gun to the east alley. Full pressure, on my mark." "The originals," Helen protested as James carefully resealed the preservation case. "We can't just... Sometimes the only way to protect something is to let it go." James cut her off, thinking of all the close calls in his career, all the times he'd had to choose between what he wanted to save and what he could save. "They'll be watching for documents, but a phone full of photos." He laid out his plan quickly. The deck gun's water cannon would provide cover, turning the alley into a momentary curtain of spray. In the chaos, Dr. Chen would slip away with the phone, while the rest of them surrendered with the empty cases, buying time and distance for the truth to spread. "Your daughter," Helen said quietly, as they prepared themselves. "She suspected something. Like this. It's why she asked for my help with the research." James thought of Emily's urgent messages, her attempt to warn him. "Then she's the one who needs to see these photos first. Ready?" They nodded, gathering their strength for one final push. Above them, the Madison building began its final collapse. While outside, agents waited to contain a truth that had already escaped. James keyed his radio one last time. "Sarah, hit it." 3 hours after the Madison building collapsed, James sat in the station's locker room, staring at his phone. Dozens of missed calls and messages crowded the screen, but one text from an unknown number stood out. "Photos received. E-safe. Wait. For contact." His fingers were still trembling slightly, not from the night's exertion, but from the debriefing that followed. The federal agents had been thorough, their questions precise. They'd wanted to know exactly what he'd seen in the vault, what documents they'd recovered, whether anyone had photographed anything. He'd stuck to basic facts: smoke conditions, structural integrity, civilian rescue, standard firefighter responses. They hadn't asked about the deck gun's unexpected deployment, creating a wall of water that had turned the alley into chaos. Hadn't mentioned how Dr. Sarah Chen had vanished in that crucial moment, or why Helen Martinez's phone had mysteriously malfunctioned during the incident, showing nothing but water damage. "Cap?" Mike's voice carried concern. "Chief wants to see you." James nodded, pocketing his phone. The device felt heavier now, weighted with secrets and unspoken messages. As he stood, his turnout gear shifted, and he felt the reassuring crinkle of paper, a small scrap he'd managed to conceal during the chaos, torn from the corner of Revere's letter, just enough to prove it had been real. The chief's office was unusually crowded. 2 men in dark suits stood near the window, while a woman in a federal marshal's uniform leaned against the desk. The chief himself looked like he'd aged a decade. "In 3 hours, sit down, James," the chief said, his voice carefully neutral. "These people have some follow-up questions about the Madison incident." James's phone buzzed in his pocket, once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession, the pattern Emily had used since high school to signal urgency. But he kept his expression neutral as he sat. "Captain Morrison," the woman began, "we need to discuss the architectural anomalies you encountered. Specifically the sub-level that wasn't in any official plans." "With respect," James replied, feeling the scrap of paper against his chest, "I've filed my incident report. The building was unstable, visibility was near zero, and my priority was rescuing civilians. Any architectural observations would be unreliable under those conditions." One of the suited men stepped forward. "And the civilians? Dr. Martinez mentioned documents, historical artifacts." "Sir, in 30 years of service, I've learned one thing. When people are trapped in a burning building, they say all kinds of things. Stress, smoke inhalation, it affects the mind." His phone buzzed again. 4 quick pulses, Emily's childhood signal for all clear. He resisted the urge to check it. "Captain," the woman's tone hardened, "surely you understand the sensitivity of this situation. A historic building with undocumented secure areas, missing researchers, coincidental equipment malfunctions. The chief cleared his throat. James has an exemplary record. If he says he was focused on the rescue, a commotion outside interrupted them. Through the office window, James caught glimpses of news vans pulling up to the station. His phone vibrated one final time, a single long buzz. In his pocket, the screen lit up with a message he could just make out. Story breaks in 5. Get ready. The suited men noticed the vehicles too. They exchanged glances before the first one spoke again. We'll continue this discussion later. Captain Morrison, I'm sure you understand. You're not to speak with the media about any aspect of this incident. James thought of the scrap of paper against his chest, the photos on their way to Emily, and the truth that had survived centuries of attempted destruction. Of course, he said evenly. I understand completely. But as the federal agents hurried out to intercept the arriving media, James knew the truth was already beyond their control. Whatever happened next would depend on Emily Dr. Chen and how many copies of those photos were already spreading across secure channels. He pulled out his phone, finally reading Emily's messages. The last one made him smile despite everything. Dad, remember what Mom always said? The truth is like fire. Try to contain it and it only spreads faster. Time to let it burn. The university library's rare book room was empty at this hour, save for Emily and a scattered collection of research materials. When James entered, she was bent over a laptop, surrounded by stacks of notes and historical texts. The resemblance to Carol in her research days was almost painful. Dad! She jumped up, hugging him fiercely before pulling back to study his face. Are you okay? When I saw the building collapse on the news, I'm fine, he assured her, though his muscles still ached from the night's events. But we need to talk about what was really in that building, and why you tried to warn me. Emily's expression turned serious. She moved to a stack of notebooks, Dr. Martinez's research notes, James realized, and pulled out several pages of handwritten observations. Look at this, she said, spreading the papers across the table. Helen's been tracking a pattern for years. Every major fire in Boston's history that destroyed historical buildings, they all follow the same template. The same strategic points, the same accelerant patterns, even the same timing, always when documents were being moved or archived. James studied the notes. Detailed sketches of burn patterns matched exactly what he'd seen in the Madison building. Beside them, Helen had meticulously documented similar patterns from historical fires, dating back to the colonial era. The night Paul Revere Road, Emily continued, pulling up digital scans on her laptop, wasn't just about British troops. There was a second mission, documented only in these private letters we found. A team of patriots was moving sensitive documents between hidden vaults, documents that proved certain founding fathers were actually working for. A noise in the hallway made them both freeze. After a moment, Emily continued in a lower voice. The society that wanted these documents destroyed, they're still active. The same group that started those historical fires is still operating today, using the same methods, protecting the same secrets. And now they're after you, James said, the weight of this revelation settling in his chest. That's why Dr. Chen disappeared with the photos. You're distributing the evidence. Emily nodded, pulling up an encrypted messaging app. We have historians and journalists standing by across the country. The moment we give the signal, everything goes public simultaneously. Too many sources for them to contain. James picked up one of Helen's sketches, a detailed diagram of vault locations beneath Boston's oldest buildings. The Madison building. It wasn't just one vault, was it? It was a hub, Emily confirmed, connected to a whole network of hidden archives. The fire was meant to destroy the evidence and collapse the access tunnels, but they didn't count on a firefighter with 30 years of experience reading those burn patterns. She fell silent, studying him with Carol's analytical gaze. Dad, I know we haven't always seen eye to eye on things. After Mom died, I threw myself into academic work, trying to be like her, while I stayed in the field, doing what I knew best," James finished. "But maybe we're more alike than we thought, both of us trying to protect things worth saving, you with your research, me with my rescues." Emily smiled, touching the worn edges of Helen's notes. "Mom would love this, you know, us working together, uncovering historical mysteries. She always said the best discoveries come from combining different perspectives." A notification pinged on Emily's laptop. Dr. Chen's face appeared in a secure video window, her background suggesting she was somewhere far from Boston. "The files are ready," she reported. "Digital copies have been distributed to secure locations. We're just waiting for your signal to release everything." James thought of the federal agents at the station, of Helen's careful documentation, of centuries of hidden truth waiting to be revealed. What happens when it all comes out? Emily's expression was determined, Carol's expression, when she decided something was worth fighting for. Everything changes, history gets rewritten, and a lot of powerful people have to answer for generations of deception. She turned to him, and in that moment she wasn't just his daughter or Carol's legacy. She was a guardian of truth in her own right. "Are you ready for that, Dad? Once we release these documents, there's no going back." James touched the scrap of paper still carried in his pocket, thinking of all the fires he'd fought over the years. Some had been natural disasters, others tragic accidents. But now he wondered how many had been purposeful destruction, how many truths had been lost to carefully engineered flames. "Truths like a fire," he said, echoing Carol's words. "Once it starts spreading, you can't control it. You can only help guide it in the right direction." He nodded to Dr. Chen's waiting image. "Do it." Emily took a deep breath and began typing the release commands. In her determined focus, James saw the perfect blend of Carol's scholarly precision and his own practical courage. Together, they were about to light a very different kind of fire, one that would illuminate rather than destroy. The first sign that they were being watched came the next morning. James was checking his mailbox when he noticed an envelope with no return address. Inside were photographs. Him entering the library, Emily at her office, Dr. Martinez being escorted into a federal building. Each image was marked with a precise time and date. What chilled him most was the final photo, himself and Emily in the rare bookroom just hours ago, caught through the window in crisp digital clarity. On the back, a single typed line, "Some fires can't be contained." His phone rang. Emily's voice was tense. "Dad, are you seeing them? The surveillance photos?" "Just got mine." He kept his voice calm, though his pulse had quickened. "How's Dr. Martinez?" "Under protective custody. That's what they're calling it. But her office has been sealed, and no one's allowed to contact her." Emily paused. "They're moving fast, Dad. 3 more historical buildings have filed for sudden demolition permits this morning. They're trying to destroy the other vaults before we can document them." James studied the photos again. The quality, the angles, this wasn't amateur work. "Have you released the documents yet?" "Dr. Chen is coordinating with journalists, verifying everything before we go public. We need the story to be bulletproof when it breaks." Another pause. "But Dad, someone's trying to access our secure servers. Sophisticated attacks. They know we have the photos." Movement caught his eye. A dark sedan, passing his house for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Through his window he could see 2 men inside, their faces hidden behind dark glasses despite the cloudy day. "Emily, listen carefully. Remember that old procedure Mom and I taught you for when you thought you were being followed? The ice cream protocol?" She almost laughed. "Dad, I was 12. It still works. Multiple stops, irregular patterns, public places." And Emily, he watched the sedan make another pass. "Don't trust anyone we didn't personally verify before." This started. His work phone buzzed. "The chief. Got to go. Stay safe." The chief's message was brief. Administrative leave, effective immediately. Pending investigation of Madison incident. Surrender badge and equipment. Through his front window, James saw the sedan finally park. One of the men stepped out, adjusting his jacket in a way that momentarily revealed a shoulder holster. His personal phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. "Your daughter's research is fascinating, Captain Morrison. Shame, if anything, happened to her archives. Fire hazards are so unpredictable these days." Then another chime. Emily had sent a photo. His breath caught when he opened it. The image showed a page from Paul Revere's actual journal, its aged paper carefully preserved. The entry described not just the British troops' movements, but a coordinated effort to protect repositories of truth from those who would reshape history to serve their own ends. Below it, Emily's message: "Found this in Mom's old research. Files. She knew, Dad. She was investigating this too before she got sick. Maybe that wasn't just cancer after all." The suggestion hit him like a physical blow. Carol's rapid decline had seemed so sudden, so aggressive. At the time, they'd been too overwhelmed with grief to question it. But now, a third chime. Dr. Chen. "Servers compromised, moving to backup channels. They're trying to erase everything, James, just like they did in 1775, in 1872. And every time someone's gotten close to the truth." The men from the sedan were approaching his front door. James could hear their measured footsteps on his porch. The precise movements of professionals who excelled at making problems disappear. He looked again at the surveillance photos, at the image of himself and Emily working together in the library. They'd wanted him to feel exposed, vulnerable. Instead, the photos reinforced everything he was fighting for: the right to uncover truth, to protect history, to finish what Carol had started. The doorbell rang. James took a deep breath, remembering every fire he'd ever fought. Sometimes the most dangerous blazes were the ones that burned invisible, hidden behind walls of power and secrecy. But even those fires left evidence if you knew where to look. He touched the fragment of Revere's letter in his pocket, sent a quick deletion command on his phone, and went to answer the door. The real challenge wasn't just staying alive anymore. It was keeping the truth alive long enough to set it free. The men at James's door weren't there to arrest him, which was almost worse. They were there to invite him to a consultation about fire safety protocols for historic buildings. Their smiles never reached their eyes. 6 hours later, he sat in a sterile conference room at the Federal Building, watching as they laid out a map of Boston's historic district. Red dots marked every major fire since 1775. The pattern was unmistakable once you knew what to look for: a precise network of strategic points, each fire destroying specific buildings at specific times. "You see it, don't you, Captain Morrison?" The woman who spoke hadn't given her name, just credentials from an agency he'd never heard of. The efficiency, the precision, all protecting something greater than individual truth. "Protecting," James repeated carefully, "or controlling." She spread out photographs of past fires: the Great Boston Fire, the Coconut Grove, dozens of smaller blazes lost to history. In each one, James could now see the calculated nature of the burn patterns, the same signatures he'd witnessed in the Madison building. "Your daughter's research," she continued, "threatens to destabilize more than just historical records. Some truths, Captain Morrison, are like unexploded ordnance. Disturb them carelessly, and the damage spreads beyond control." His phone lay on the table between them, confiscated, but not yet searched. They hadn't found its hidden partition, where Emily's decoded messages still waited. The latest had been brief: "Mom's old storage unit, now." "Consider your position," the woman pressed. "Your career, your pension, your daughter's academic future. All of that could burn away as easily as the Madison building." She paused. "Or you could help us maintain stability. Guide the narrative in a more constructive direction." James studied the map, seeing it through a firefighter's eyes. Each strategic point formed part of a larger pattern, a web of destruction designed to protect something at its center. But what caught his attention was a location without a red dot, the Old North Church. "You missed one," he said quietly. The woman's eyebrow lifted. "Pardon? April 19th, 1775. There should be a fire marked at the Old North Church. That's where it started, isn't it? The first coordinated attempt to destroy evidence. But something survived. Something Revere and his people managed to save and hide." Her smile vanished. On the wall, a clock ticked past midnight. Somewhere in the city, Emily was probably already at Carol's storage unit, finding whatever their mother had left behind. "You're making dangerous connections, Captain." "That's what firefighters do," James replied. "We find patterns, track things to their source, figure out what's really burning and why." He leaned forward. "You know what else we learn? Sometimes the best way to fight a fire is to light a backfire. Control the burn before it controls you." A phone buzzed. Not his, but one belonging to the silent man by the door. He checked it, then whispered something urgent to the woman. Her face tightened. "Excuse me a moment, Captain Morrison." They stepped outside, leaving him alone with the map and his thoughts. The moment the door closed, James moved. The phone they'd taken was a decoy. His real one, hidden in a modified flashlight casing, had been receiving Emily's messages all along. He pulled it out now, quickly photographing the map with its telling pattern of fires. Emily's latest message confirmed his suspicions. "Mom's files confirm everything. Old North Church blueprints show tunnel system, original vault still intact, meeting Dr. Chen there in 30. The voices outside grew louder. James returned to his seat just as the door opened. The woman's composed mask had cracked slightly. "It seems," she said tightly, "there's been a development at your daughter's university. A small fire in the archives department. Nothing serious, but all her research materials may be compromised." James thought of Carol's storage unit, of the evidence already spreading through secure channels, of the truth hidden beneath the Old North Church for 2.5 centuries. He allowed himself a small smile. "Funny thing about fires," he said. "Sometimes what looks like destruction is really just illumination in disguise." The woman's eyes narrowed as his meaning sank in. By now, Emily would be at the church, following their mother's map to the last preserved vault. The truth wasn't just surviving anymore, it was about to burst into the light. The letter arrived at Emily's office by courier, just as James was being escorted from the federal building. Heavy cream paper, expensive letterhead, black ink that looked too thick to be normal printer toner. The message was brief. "Professor Morrison, your mother understood the importance of discretion. Before her illness progressed so tragically, she made the wise choice to step back from certain historical inquiries. We trust you'll show similar wisdom. Otherwise, we cannot guarantee the safety of any facilities housing your research, or those conducting it. Some academic pursuits are better left in the past." Emily's hand shook as she photographed the letter, sending it through their secure channel. She'd found something else in Carol's storage unit, a similar letter, dated 2 weeks before her mother's first diagnosis. "I'm at the church," Dr. Chen's reply came quickly. "Underground access located, but Emily, there's activity above. Multiple vehicles, communications gear. They're sweeping the area." James's response followed. "Don't wait for me. If Mom's notes are right, the vault evidence has to reach the public before midnight. After that, they'll have demolition permits for half the historic district." Emily gathered her research materials, trying to ignore the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside her office. Heavy, measured steps that didn't match any of her colleagues' gaits. Her phone chimed with an alert from their network of supporters. 3 more historians had reported break-ins, their research accidentally destroyed. Fire alarms had cleared. 2 more archives, where their evidence was stored, but they hadn't found everything. Carol Morrison had been methodical in her precautions, distributing copies of her research across multiple secure locations. The letter writers hadn't counted on her passing that same caution down to her daughter. Emily's office door opened without a knock. Two men entered, the same ones who'd been watching her father's house. One closed the blinds, while the other placed another letter on her desk. "Professor," he said quietly, "we're here to discuss your recent grant application. The review committee has some concerns about your methodology." Emily stared at the new letter, her mind racing. They didn't know about her mother's storage unit, or the old North Church vault. They thought this was just about her current research. "Methodology," she repeated, buying time as her phone silently copied and transmitted her most critical files. "You mean my focus on historically documented fire patterns, among other things?" The man's smile was practiced. "Your department's funding comes through several private foundations that prefer their resources be directed toward less controversial areas of study." Through her window, Emily caught a glimpse of more dark vehicles pulling up to the building. They were done playing subtle. Her phone vibrated. Dr. Chen had reached the vault. James was en route. Everything they needed to expose 2 centuries of calculated destruction was about to come to light. Emily thought of her mother's courage, her father's dedication to truth, and made her decision. She stood, gathering her coat. "Gentlemen, I believe you're right. Some things are better left in the past." She moved toward the door. "I'll need to clean out my office, of course. Protocol for terminated faculty." The men exchanged glances. "This was going too easily." "Of course," the first one said smoothly. "We can have someone help you pack. That won't be necessary." Emily's hand was on the door handle now. "But I should warn you about one small detail." "Oh?" "My methodology." She allowed herself a small smile. "Mom taught me to always keep backups. Lots of backups, currently spreading through every secure academic server in the country." Their expressions shifted from confident to alarmed. One reached for his phone. "You can't," he began. "Watch me." "Watch." Emily stepped into the hallway, where students and faculty were already gathering, drawn by the unusual presence of stern men in dark suits. Witnesses, cameras, protection through visibility. "Oh, and one more thing," she called back to them. "Next time you want to threaten someone, don't use the same letterhead you used on my mother 7 years ago. Some patterns are a little too easy to recognize." She walked away as they frantically made calls, knowing she had minutes at best before they recovered and pursued. But minutes were all she needed. The truth about the fires, about her mother's discovery, about everything. It was already burning. Too bright to contain, her phone buzzed one final time. "Dr. Chen. Vault accessed. Files intact. Your mother was right about everything. Meet at the secondary location." Emily stepped out into the bright afternoon sun, finally understanding what her father always said about fires. Sometimes the only way to fight one was to light another, one that would burn away shadows and illuminate the truth. The secondary location turned out to be the place where everything had started, the rare book room where Carol Morrison had first discovered the pattern 20 years ago. As James and Emily pored over the documents from the old North Church vault, the full scope of the conspiracy finally emerged. "Look at this," Emily whispered, spreading out a leather-bound journal. "Chief Fire Warden's private log, 1872. He documents, coordinating with specialized personnel to ensure specific buildings burned completely while protecting others. They engineered the Great Boston Fire, Dad. Used it as cover to destroy evidence while consolidating power." James studied the thermal imaging printouts from Dr. Chen's vault exploration. The construction matches. Same vault design under the old North Church as the Madison building. They've been using the same architects, the same methods for centuries. The historical record laid bare a chilling pattern of orchestrated destruction and calculated preservation. The society, they called themselves the custodians, had shaped American history from the shadows, using fire as their tool of choice. Dr. Chen's voice came through their secure line. "Emily, the digital archives are assembled. We've confirmed authenticity on over 3,000 documents spanning from 1765 to present, including your mother's complete research files." Carol's final research notes were the most damning. She'd traced the custodians' modern operations, shell companies buying historic properties, mysterious funding for selective preservation, and most crucially, a pattern of suspicious deaths among researchers who got too close to the truth. "Mum knew they were onto her," Emily said softly, touching her mother's familiar handwriting. "That's why she scattered her research, left us the breadcrumb trail. She knew we'd eventually put it together." James's phone lit up with an urgent message from Mike at the station. "Cap, something's happening. Emergency demolition orders just came through for 17 historic buildings. Crews mobilizing now." They were running out of time. The custodians were preparing to destroy their entire network of evidence vaults rather than risk exposure. But Carol had anticipated this too. Her notes included detailed maps of every vault location, every hidden archive. More importantly, she'd documented the one thing the custodians couldn't afford to become public: proof that key moments in American history had been carefully orchestrated, their true nature hidden behind conveniently timed fires. The Boston Tea Party, Emily read from one authenticated document, wasn't about tea at all. The ships contained evidence implicating prominent colonists as British agents. The patriots who burned the cargo were actually destroying evidence of their own duplicity. "And they've been doing it ever since," James added, examining records of suspicious fires through the centuries. Civil War documents, Industrial Revolution worker protests, Civil Rights era evidence, all carefully edited. Through strategic destruction. Dr. Chen's voice crackled through again. "Files are uploading to secure servers worldwide. Major news outlets have copies. Even if they shut us down now, the truth is out there." Emily stared at her mother's final research notes, dated just days before her sudden illness. "They killed her for this, didn't they? Made it look like aggressive cancer, just like they made other deaths look like accidents or natural causes." James placed his hand over hers. She knew the risks, but she also knew what would happen if no one ever stood up to them. He looked at the assembled evidence, centuries of hidden history finally brought to light. She made sure the truth would survive, even if she didn't. Sirens began wailing in the distance. Through the library windows they could see emergency vehicles converging on the historic district. The custodians' final attempt to bury the truth had begun, but they were too late. Carol Morrison's meticulous research, combined with the vault documents and 2 centuries of suppressed evidence, had created an unquenchable fire of truth. Already, news alerts were popping up on their phones as the first stories broke. "Dad," Emily said quietly, "what happens now?" James thought of all the fires he'd fought, all the times he'd thought he was just preserving buildings when he'd actually been playing into the custodians' hands. "Now," he said, "we let it burn. All of it, every lie, every cover-up, every carefully maintained shadow. Sometimes the only way to save history is to let the truth burn so bright that no one can look away." The hidden cameras had been Carol's final gift to them, tiny devices installed throughout Boston's historic district, activated by her posthumous instructions. Now, as James and Emily watched the feeds on Dr. Chen's secure server, they witnessed the custodian's endgame unfold in real time. "Southeast corner, Old State House," Emily noted, marking another location on their map. 3 men, placing what looked like thermite charges. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. The footage showed teams moving with military precision through the historic district. Each carried specialized incendiary equipment designed to leave the same signature burn patterns they'd used for centuries. They're getting sloppy, James observed, watching one team's hasty work. Look at those placement patterns. Nothing like the precision they used at Madison. They're rushing, making mistakes. Another feed showed the woman from the federal building directing operations from a mobile command center. Her composed mask had cracked, replaced by barely controlled panic as more news outlets picked up the story. Dr. Chen's voice came through their secure channel. Local stations are going live with the footage. Federal agencies are being flooded with calls. The custodian's political contacts are scrambling to distance themselves. James's phone buzzed. Mike again. Cap, you need to see this. Fire Marshal's office just received an anonymous tip about pre-placed incendiary devices in multiple historic buildings. They're calling in the bomb squad. Send them to the old State House first, James replied. And Mike, make sure they document everything, every device, every burn pattern. It all needs to go on record. Emily was focused on another camera feed, this one showing a familiar face. Helen Martinez being hustled out of protective custody toward a waiting car. But Helen wasn't playing along anymore. The footage clearly showed her breaking away from her escorts, running toward a group of reporters. Smart woman, Emily murmured. She knows they can't touch her in front of cameras. The feeds from other locations told similar stories. Custodian teams abandoning their missions as police responded to multiple tips, reporters converging on every scene, citizens with phones recording everything. Wait, James said suddenly, studying the command center footage. Why aren't they destroying the evidence of their current operation? All that incendiary equipment, the tactical gear, they're just leaving it. Emily's eyes widened as she realized what he meant, because this isn't their real endgame. They're creating a distraction, keeping everyone focused on the historic district while they go after the source, James finished. The Old North Church vault, the original documents. But Carol had anticipated this too. The camera feeds from beneath the church showed empty chambers, stripped clean hours ago. In their place, high-resolution photos of every document had been taped to the walls, along with a simple message. The truth burns brighter than any fire. Emily's phone chimed with an alert from their network. Major newspapers were going live, with the full story. Not just the historical revelations, but detailed evidence of the custodian's modern operations. Shell companies, bribed officials, suspicious deaths disguised as accidents. Through the command center feed, they watched the woman from the federal building receive the news. Her phone fell from suddenly nerveless fingers as she realized the game was over. Look at these viewer numbers, Dr. Chen reported. The live streams are going viral. People are sharing the hidden camera footage faster than anyone can take it. Down. James thought of all the fires he'd fought over his career, never realizing he'd been an unwitting player in a centuries-old conspiracy. But now, watching the custodian's carefully constructed world unravel through Carol's hidden cameras, he understood what his wife had meant in her final notes. The biggest lies burn the brightest when exposed to light. Dad, Emily said softly, watching the feeds light up with police arriving at the command center. I think Mom would be proud of us. He squeezed her shoulder, remembering Carol's determination to preserve truth no matter the cost. She already was, honey. She made sure of it. On the screens before them, decades of deception continued to crumble. The custodians had finally met the one thing they couldn't control, a fire of truth spreading too fast to contain, burning away centuries of carefully maintained shadows. Dr. Chen's digital archive was a masterpiece of organization. Every document, photo and video file catalogued and cross-referenced with multiple layers of authentication. As it went live across secure servers worldwide, decades of deception began to unravel with devastating precision. First wave of confirmations coming. In, she reported from her secure location. Historical societies, academic institutions, investigative journalists. They're all validating the evidence. The custodians can't dismiss this as conspiracy theories anymore. Emily watched the verification notifications flood her screen. Universities across the globe were confirming the authenticity of colonial-era documents. Forensics experts verified the burn pattern analysis. Independent historians corroborated the connected events that the custodians had tried so hard to keep separate. "Look at this," she called to James, pulling up one particularly damning folder. Mom's research into modern-day custodian operations. Shell companies, offshore accounts, political connections. She mapped their entire power structure. James studied the complex web of relationships Carol had uncovered. She wasn't just documenting history, she was building a case for criminal conspiracy. Their secure channel crackled with urgent updates. Helen Martinez had reached a national news studio where she was methodically laying out evidence of the custodians' recent activities. Police were securing the historic district, documenting abandoned incendiary devices. Federal agents, real ones this time, were moving on identified custodian facilities. "They're trying to scrub their digital footprint," Dr. Chen warned, monitoring network traffic. "Mass deletions of records, server wipes." "Let them try," Emily replied, a fierce smile playing at her lips. "Mom built this archive like a hydra. Every time they take down one copy, 3 more appear on different servers. The more they fight it, the faster it spreads." The archive wasn't just a collection of documents, it was Carol Morrison's legacy, designed to ensure the truth would survive no matter what. Each file was protected by blockchain verification, every piece of evidence backed by multiple sources. She'd created a digital fortress that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, impossible to destroy. James's phone buzzed with messages from firefighters across the city. They were comparing notes, recognizing the suspicious burn patterns they'd seen over the years. The very people the custodians had used to cover their tracks were now helping expose them. "Emily," Dr. Chen's voice held sudden urgency. "Someone's trying to access the Old North Church vault. Local cameras show your mother's old research partner." The security feed showed an elderly man entering the church, moving with purpose. Emily's breath caught. "Dr. Harrison. But he died in a house fire 3 years ago." "No," James said quietly. "They wanted us to think he died, just like they tried to make us think Mom's cancer was natural." He checked his weapon, standard issue for senior fire officers, though he'd rarely needed it. "He's not there for prayer." "He'll find an empty vault," Emily started, but James was already shaking his head. "They don't know that. And if Harrison was working with them while partnering with your mother, he might know about her other backup locations." Emily was already gathering her equipment. "We need to get to the church." Dr. Chen's fingers flew across her keyboard, sending police to all known archive locations. And there, every document Harrison ever touched in the archive now has a special flag. If he tries to access anything, we'll know exactly what he's after. The digital archive continued its relentless spread across the globe. With each passing minute, more experts verified its contents, more journalists published findings, more pieces of the historical puzzle fell into place. The truth was no longer just burning, it was exploding into the light. "Dad," Emily said as they headed for the church, "what if Harrison's not working alone? What if he's their cleanup crew?" James thought of Carol's meticulous planning, of the depth of her digital fortress. "Then he's about to learn what your mother always said. Knowledge, once truly free, can never be caged again." Behind them, screens filled with validation reports as the archive continued its work. The custodians had spent centuries controlling history through strategic destruction. Now, that same history was being restored through countless digital copies, each one a spark in the spreading fire of truth. The Old North Church stood silent in the gathering dusk, its historic brick walls holding centuries of secrets. James and Emily approached from different directions, coordinating through Dr. Chen's secure channel. Inside, Harrison was about to Discover that Carol Morrison's final moves in this long game had been perfectly played. They found him in the empty vault, surrounded by Carol's message photos, his composed academic demeanor cracking as he read her words. When he heard their footsteps, he didn't even turn around. She knew, didn't she? His voice echoed in the underground chamber. All those years we worked together, Carol knew I was reporting to them. She knew, Emily confirmed, keeping her distance. Just like she knew about the cancer, the treatment they gave her that made sure she'd never expose what she'd found. Harrison's shoulders slumped. I tried to warn her, told her to stop digging. The custodians protected our heritage, maintained order, by burning away any truth that didn't fit their narrative, James cut in. By killing anyone who threatened their control. Control was necessary. Harrison turned, his academic restraint finally breaking. You've seen the documents, the chaos that could have erupted if people knew the real history of this country's founding, the true nature of its evolution. So you helped them murder my wife. James's voice was deadly quiet. Help them destroy evidence, manipulate history, all in the name of necessary control. Harrison pulled himself up, a lifetime of aristocratic authority showing through. I did what was required to maintain stability, just as generations of custodians have done before me. And now it's over, Emily interrupted, holding up her phone. The screen showed a live stream of the federal building downtown, where the woman who'd threatened James was reading a prepared statement. Acknowledged the existence of a clandestine organization known as the Custodians, she was saying, her voice tightly controlled. For over 2 centuries, this group has engaged in systematic destruction of historical evidence and manipulation of public records. Harrison staggered as if physically struck. The protocols for exposure specifically state that all evidence should be destroyed in a final coordinated action. Dr. Chen's voice came through their phones. Check the news, Doctor. Your protocols are being live-streamed across every major network. The custodians' own fail-safe procedures are being used to expose them. On Emily's screen, the confession continued. The woman detailed centuries of orchestrated fires, strategic destruction of evidence, and carefully maintained deceptions. With each revelation, Harrison seemed to age years. You don't understand what you've done, he whispered. The power vacuum. This will create the chaos when they realize they've been lied to for generations. Emily stepped forward. When they learn that the history they were taught was carefully edited through strategic destruction. That's not chaos, Doctor. That's truth. James moved to the vault's entrance, blocking Harrison's escape route. The only chaos is what you and your custodians created, burning away any truth that didn't fit your preferred narrative. How many died to protect your order? How many lives did you destroy to maintain your control? Harrison reached into his jacket, but Emily was faster. The gun's not there, Doctor. We already cleared the church, just like we cleared every other location in Mom's notes. Carol's notes. Harrison's eyes widened with sudden understanding. The research she showed me, the documents she asked me to verify, she was feeding me selected information, using me to confirm what she'd already discovered. Until the very end, Emily confirmed. Every file you authenticated, every source you verified for her, became part of the ironclad evidence she was building. Even your attempts to stop her research just proved how far the custodians would go to maintain control. On their phones, the confession reached its devastating conclusion. The woman was naming names now, detailing the modern organization's structure, its political connections, its methods of maintaining power through selective destruction of evidence. Harrison sank. To his knees, decades of certainty crumbling. We thought we were protecting something greater than ourselves, maintaining necessary illusions for the greater good. The only thing you protected was power, James said quietly. And the only thing you maintained was a lie. He nodded to the Federal agents now appearing at the vault entrance. It's time to tell the truth, Doctor, all of it. As Harrison was led away, Emily touched one of the photos Carol had left on the vault walls. "She won, Mom," she whispered. "Your fire of truth burned brighter than their darkness." Above them, church bells began to toll, marking the hour when history itself was finally being rewritten, not through destruction this time, but through the illumination of long-hidden truth. 1 month after Harrison's confession, James sat in Emily's university office, watching as she added another verified document to the new historical record. The massive digital archive had grown into something unprecedented, a living document of America's true history, updated in real time as more evidence emerged from hidden vaults and personal collections across the country. The National Archives just confirmed another cache, Emily said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Pre-revolutionary documents that survived the custodian's purge. They were hidden inside a false wall at Mount Vernon, of all places. James studied the wall of screens displaying the ongoing work. Historians worldwide were collaborating to reconstruct the truth, filling in gaps that had been deliberately burned away. Each revelation sparked new understanding of how profoundly the custodians had shaped their nation's narrative. "Your mother would love this," he said softly, "not just exposing the lies, but watching people work together to restore what was lost." Emily nodded, touching the framed photo of Carol on her desk. "She built the framework for all of this. Those breadcrumbs she left us, the way she structured her research. She knew it would take a community to rebuild what they destroyed. The media had dubbed it the Great Restoration, this unprecedented effort to reconstruct historical truth. As the custodians' power structure crumbled, their vaults and archives were being opened across the country. Each discovery added new pieces to the puzzle James Morrison had died protecting. Dr. Chen's team just finished analyzing the burn pattern database, Emily continued. They've identified over 300 suspicious fires in the past century. Alone, each one strategically placed to destroy specific evidence. And now those same patterns are helping us locate more hidden vaults, James added. He'd been consulting with fire departments nationwide, teaching them to recognize the custodians' signatures. Every technique they use to hide the truth is becoming a tool to uncover it. His phone buzzed. Mike sending an update from the station. The fire investigation unit had been reorganized, with a new mandate to review every suspicious fire in Boston's history. They wanted James to head the division. "They're offering you reinstatement," Emily noted, reading over his shoulder. "Full rank and position," James considered the offer. He'd spent his career fighting fires, never realizing some of them had been deliberately set to destroy truth. Now he had the chance to help restore what was lost. "I'll take it," he decided. "But only if I can split my time between active duty and working with your historical reconstruction team. These patterns we're finding, they're not just about the past. They could help prevent future attempts to erase history." Emily smiled, Carol's smile full of determination and hope. "Mom always said firefighters and historians had the same basic job, protecting what matters from the forces trying to destroy it." On her screens, the new historical record continued to grow. The truth about the Boston Tea Party had sparked a revolution in colonial-era studies. The Civil War revelations had transformed understanding of post-war reconstruction. Each restored document shed new light on how profoundly the custodians had shaped American identity through strategic destruction. "You know what amazes me most?" Emily said, pulling up the latest analysis. "How many people kept copies, hid evidence, preserved fragments of truth. For every document the custodians destroyed, someone managed to save a piece of the real story." "Like Mom did," James agreed. She knew she couldn't protect everything, so she focused on creating a path for others to follow, building a framework for truth to survive. The sun was setting over Boston's historic district, its light touching centuries-old buildings that had survived countless attempts at destruction. In Emily's office, father and daughter continued their work, adding new pages to humanity's restored story. The custodians had spent generations trying to control history through strategic destruction. But in the end, the truth had proved more resilient than any fire, and the light of its revelation was illuminating far more than they had ever tried to hide. 5 years later, James stood before the newly unveiled memorial outside the restored Madison building. The bronze plaque gleamed in the morning sun, its inscription simple but profound. Dedicated to Carol Morrison, 1965-2018 scholar, Mother, Guardian of Truth. Some lights burn so bright no shadow can contain them, and to all those who preserved our true history through centuries of attempted erasure, the building itself had been transformed into the Center for Historical Preservation and Recovery, housing both a state-of-the-art fire investigation unit and Emily's expanding historical research department. The old vault that had started everything was now a public museum, teaching visitors about the long struggle between truth and those who would destroy it. Ready, Dad? Emily appeared at his side, now the center's director. Her latest book on the custodian's influence had just won a Pulitzer. The new class of investigators is waiting. Inside, James found a roomful of eager faces, firefighters and historians, training together, learning to recognize the patterns of deliberate destruction in both past and present. Every month, more hidden archives were being discovered using the techniques Carol had pioneered. History and fire have something in common, he began, using the words that had become his standard opening. Both can illuminate or destroy. Both can be used to protect truth or erase it. Our job is to ensure they're used for illumination, never destruction. He touched the fragment of Revere's letter he still carried, now carefully preserved and framed, a personal reminder of where it all began. The full document had eventually been found in another vault, along with countless other pieces of America's true story. The custodian's fall had triggered similar revelations worldwide. Other nations discovered their own hidden histories, their own carefully orchestrated destructions. But with each discovery came renewal, as humanity slowly rebuilt its understanding of its own past. Dr. Chen had developed software that could reconstruct burned documents from fragments and ashes. Helen Martinez now headed a global initiative preventing the destruction of historical evidence. Even Mike had found his calling, leading specialized teams that protected archives during times of conflict. But it was the small memorial garden behind the center that meant the most to James. There, beside a quiet fountain, stood a simple bench, with a view of the Old North Church. The plaque on it read only, "Carol's Place, where truth takes root." Emily found him there that evening, as she often did. "Mom would love what this place has become," she said, sitting beside him. "Not just preserving history, but teaching others to protect it." James watched the sunset paint the historic skyline in shades of gold. She knew it would take more than one person or one generation to restore what was lost. That's why she left us breadcrumbs instead of answers, so we'd learn to find truth for ourselves. The center's lights came on, illuminating the rebuilt Madison building. Inside, researchers and firefighters continued their shared mission, ensuring that never again would shadows be allowed to erase humanity's story. Above them, the Old North Church bells began their evening toll, no longer guarding secrets, but celebrating truth restored. And in the growing dusk, father and daughter sat together, watching the light of understanding continue to spread, one revelation at a time.